Joining me right now to talk a little Texas and national politics, GOP political strategist, also co-founder of MustReadTexas.com, Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good morning, Chad.
Thanks for appearing on the show today. Let's start off talking a little bit about 2016. Mitt Romney over the weekend made a little bit of news as it appears he's now thinking about jumping back into presidential politics. And what do you think the chances are that he actually runs again in 2016? And if he does, what do you think the chances are he gets the nomination again?
You know, a couple of months ago, I would have said it was about 10% chance, and it was sort of would have required, Jeb not running and Christie, faltering or something like that. But now, just based on if we sort of take him at his word, I think he's telling major donors he's definitely considering it, and they can tell their friends that, and he's getting together with operatives from his last run, and apparently he scheduled a number of speeches for the spring, including one at Mississippi State here in a couple of weeks. So, I would say it's probably maybe closer to 50% at this point. I think Mitt Romney's a patriot. I think that he's looking at the field and he's very concerned that we don't have anybody that can beat Hillary. And he doesn't think Hillary can turn the country around after the 8 years of Obama. Now, to your second question, could he get the nomination? I think getting the nomination this time is going to be much, much harder than it was last time for him. Now, he's a lot stronger candidate now. He's got a much larger donor base, much larger email list, much larger political organization. He's obviously a better candidate now than he was when he started in the 2012 cycle. But if he runs and Jeb Bush runs, you're going to see the establishment vote and the establishment fundraising split in a way that we haven't seen in the past. And I think the establishment's counted on conservatives being split 4 or 5 or 6 different ways, so they had a chance to perhaps win Iowa and try to end the nomination race early. If the establishment is split between Romney and Bush, which, again, is a possibility, but it's a lot more likely now than it was a week ago. I think that's hugely significant.
Does Romney run the risk of, and you look at Romney now, and I think a lot of America looks at Romney now and goes, he's the guy who was right. He's the guy who was, obviously right on foreign policy. He would have been a much better president, obviously, than Barack Obama. And you have a lot of people who look at him that way right now. If he runs again and he loses and he doesn't get the nomination, then doesn't he take on maybe that's just kind of sad type of politician? He doesn't know when to stop type of politician?
It could be. I think that losing a general election, that's going to, unless he wins the presidency, that's going to be, the lead of his obituary. If he were to lose the primary, that would be secondary, I think, to losing the general election. But I think, again, if you just look at what his aides have said and what sources said in some of the reporting since Friday, it's clear that he just is deeply, deeply concerned about the future of the country. He's not, at this point, confident that we have anyone else that can, number one, beat Hillary, number two, do the job. And so if you're in his position and you know what goes into running for president, and you got pretty close last time, you got 60 million votes, he probably looks at it and says, I can do this. If my family's okay with it, and I want to do it again, I'm going to do it again. And I think that's kind of where he is. He's also being really encouraged to run by a lot of his donors from last time. Now, I think a lot of that is going to subside because I think a lot of that's going to go to Jeb, and a lot of that already has. Look, Jeb is likely to raise $30 to $50 million in the first quarter. That's going to be a huge advantage when you look at these other guys who haven't, fully stepped in or haven't even put exploratory committees out there. They've got, $3 to $5 million in their bank account right now. Jeb's going to have a huge financial advantage. I think that's part of why Mitt sent this signal. He wants to slow Jeb down, and he wants to show that he is interested and see what happens.
Visiting with Matt Mackowiak. Matt, let me ask you, Senator Ted Cruz, he's written a piece for Time magazine about President Obama not going over to Paris, and in it he talks about just the absence of the president was symbolic of the lack of American leadership on the world stage. How do you see the president? He didn't show up. Jake Tapper, I know of CNN, wrote a piece about how he was ashamed that he didn't have an American presence over there, and you didn't even have a lot of Republicans who tweeted about it or spoke about this unity march. How do you think that plays out in the American public?
Well, what's striking there was that photo of world leaders on the front line of that march in Paris yesterday. I think you had something like 1.5 million or even 3 million people marching in Paris yesterday. And you had Netanyahu and Abbas, standing mere, feet away from each other, from Israel and the Palestinian Authority, and there's no one there from the United States. Now, it would have been nice for the president to have gone. I understand he can't go to everything. Probably worth perhaps some security issues there. But our Attorney General was in Paris yesterday for security meetings. He did a round of Sunday show interviews in the morning, and then he decided to leave before the march.
Yeah.
So, the fact that we didn't have a high-level representative really is quite shameful, and it did make America look like they didn't care, and clearly America does care. If you just look at the media coverage, this entire week and the outpouring of support we've had for the French, I mean, it's been impressive from the American public. It has not been impressive from the American government.
Yeah. 84th Texas legislative session begins this week. Any thoughts as to what they will attempt to tackle first and how Dan Patrick will set the agenda, at least in the Senate, going forward?
Well, keep in mind, I mean, the legislative session never starts fast.
Right.
It's always a slow process. I mean, today we'll have the revenue estimate at 10 a.m. from the new comptroller here just in 15 minutes or so, Glenn Hager. That will tell legislators how much they can spend. On tomorrow at noon you'll have the speaker vote, which I don't expect to be that interesting. My guess is that Scott Turner, the challenger, will get 12 to 15 votes. And then the rest of the month is really chewed up by the Speaker and Lieutenant Governor appointing members to committees and appointing chairmen. And so until you really have committees, you can't begin, passing bills or taking up bills or things like that. I think the legislature even has ruled that unless a bill is listed as an emergency item by the governor, it can't be considered in the first 60 days. So the session always starts slow. It'll be interesting to see who some of the chairmen are that Lieutenant Governor Patrick appoints. Same thing in the House. One thing to watch is Lieutenant Governor Patrick will likely push to reduce the 2/3 rule in the Texas Senate down to 60%, same threshold you have in the United States Senate. That will be significant. That'll free up the Senate to start moving much more quickly and in regular session rather than in special session on major pieces of legislation and even conservative pieces of legislation. So I think that's likely to happen, and that is going to change the Senate. But it's not going to be an intense, first few weeks because they have to kind of start slow. They always do. Yeah,
absolutely. We'll be watching the appointments and then also the speaker's non-race that is out there. Any blowback that some of the anti-Strauss politicians have. We'll see if anything develops there. Hey, Matt, what can people find on MustReadTexas.com today?
Yeah, a lot of what we talked about, the 2016 news, Texas legislature, a couple pieces on Rick Perry's legacy as he finishes his last week as governor. You can find all that news at MustReadTexas.com.
All right. As always, thank you, Matt Mackowiak. You can follow him on Twitter at Matt Mackowiak.
Thanks, buddy.
Have a good one.